Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Nice to meet you again in my video presentation. At the moment, I would like to explain about economic efficiency and some of its related issues, such as gains from trade and market barriers. We have talked about economic efficiency when we discussed competitive market. The outcome resulting from competitive market is considered the most efficient because it gives the highest possible welfare to economic agents. So bear it in mind that efficiency is always associated with the optimal consumption, production, and allocation of resources given existing factors of production. In terms of consumption, we have the so-called efficiency in exchange. In terms of production, we have efficiency in production. It includes input efficiency as well as output efficiency. Moreover, we will see that efficiency is also not the only concern for the society or the economy. There's also concern about equity that sometimes could become the trade-off. We will see also that trade-off could improve efficiency level. And market itself is not always perfect. There is a so-called market failures. Okay, let's now talk about economic efficiency. So far, we have discussed the efficiency in a case of single market with ceteris paribus assumption. It's what we call as partial equilibrium analysis. In fact, markets are mostly interrelated. Market of one specific good is interrelated with market of its substitute and complement. Market of an output and market of its input also give feedbacks to each other. Therefore, we need to start dealing with more general analysis, not partial anymore. This is the situation in partial equilibrium analysis that we know. Market for coffee is at equilibrium condition at A. When, for instance, there is a crop failure, supply curve shifts leftward, and the new equilibrium will be at point B at lower level of quantity and higher level of price. If we consider another market, say a tea market, the substitute for coffee, the higher price of coffee will increase the demand for tea. The demand curve shifts to the right, increasing both equilibrium quantity and price of tea. It then affects demand for coffee, then to tea, to coffee, and so on until the mutual effects gone and both markets reach equilibrium at points D and Z, respectively. After we learn about the general equilibrium analysis, we can discuss further about the efficiency concept. Let's start with the efficiency in exchange. Related to this concept, we will be dealing with the followings that will be discussed one by one in this representation. Suppose that there are two consumers, Aldi and Bella. Each consumer has market baskets of two goods, such as food and clothing. The indifferent maps of the two consumers can be drawn together in the following Edgeworth box diagram. So, you can see, reading from the left to the right as normally, we have the indifferent maps of Aldi. On the other hand, mirroring the indifferent maps of Aldi, reading from the top right corner to the left, we have the indifferent maps of Bella. Why is the diagram illustrated in a box? The box actually shows the limit. Yes, the limit of resources available to our consumers. If clothing available is only 6, then if Bella already has 4, Aldi will have 2 at most. If Bella has 1, Aldi will have 5 at most. If initial allocation is at A, what can we observe? First, Aldi has 7 units of food and 1 unit of clothing to consume, while Bella has 3 units of food and 5 units of clothing. The utility of Aldi is UA and the utility of Bella is UB. Point A is the intersection between the two utilities, not the tangent. Is it an efficient allocation? If it is efficient, then the allocation is optimal. We call it Pareto efficient allocation. At point A, however, improvement can still be made through trade or an exchange process. Aldi, for instance, can exchange some of his foods for more clothing with Bella. The same is true for Bella. She can exchange some of her clothing for more foods with Aldi. The shaded area here is the room available for improvement or increasing the welfare of one party without reducing the welfare of another party. The process is called Pareto improvement. And once the tangent is reached through exchange, maybe from A to B to C or to D, then we have the Pareto efficient condition. There is no more Pareto improvement. Any shift from the tangency point will make someone better off, but at the cost of someone else who will be worse off. From the Edgeworth box diagram, we can also show all the possible Pareto efficient points, the tangency points, that vary depending on the initial resources allocation. They are all along the so-called contract curve like this. One mathematical property from all the efficient points is MRSA equals to MRSB. Marginal rate of substitution, or MRS, is the slope of an indifference curve, remember? And when two indifference curves tangent each other, it means that their slopes are the same or their MRS are equal. So along the contract curve, MRS of Aldi is equal to MRS of Bella. In a competitive market, the prices of the two goods determine the terms of exchange among consumers. When equilibrium has not been achieved, the existing price ratio may result in the excess demand and the excess supply that we know. The price ratio of clothing and food is expressed by the straight line here. The slope is PF per PC, and at the existing price of food and clothing, the best combination of goods for Aldi and Bella are at point A and B respectively. However, it means that Aldi's demand for food is QF1, while Bella's is QF2. So there is an excess supply of food. At the same point, Aldi's demand for clothing is QC1, while Bella's is QC2. So there is an excess demand for clothing. The condition leads to lower price of food and higher price of clothing, causing PF per PC decreases, or the price line is now flatter. With a flatter price line, the competitive market equilibrium occurs at point C, which is the point of tangency of both indifference curves as well as of the price line. More demand for food and less demand for clothing result in no more excess demand and excess supply. Mathematically, the efficient allocation in a competitive market equilibrium requires MRSA equals to PF per PC equals to MRSB. It can be interpreted as well that every competitive equilibrium is Pareto efficient. From the Edgeworth box diagram, now let's discuss about the utility possibilities frontier or UPF and the social welfare functions. Although UPF curve is similar to the contract curve in the sense that both curves show all the efficient allocation of resources, the UPF curve is measured in terms of the utility levels of the individuals in the society. Since the equity perspectives here are related to the well-being or the utilities of society as a whole, it is more suitable when we are trying to compare the allocation in the perspective of efficiency and equity. Look, here is the UPF curve. Every point along the UPF is economically efficient. The negative slope shows the negative correlations of Aldi's and Bella's utilities due to the scarcity of resources. And here, I show you the examples of Rawlsian and utilitarian welfare functions. All the L-shaped curves here are the Rawlsian welfare function curves. No matter how big the utility of one individual is in the society, social welfare only reflects the utility of the least well-off person. Look at point 1 here. Bella's utility is at the point. Bella's utility at the point is UB, while Aldi's is UA. Since Aldi is the least well-off person, his utility UA is reflecting the social welfare. All the downward sloping linear curves here, on the other hand, are the utilitarian welfare functions curve. Social welfare is simply the linear summation of all individuals' utilities. At point 1 again, the social welfare is UA plus UB. I don't draw egalitarian and market-oriented welfare functions because both are determined by the amount of good allocated in the society, irrespective of the level of utilities each individual gets. From the diagram, first, we can see the trade-off that might occur between efficiency and equity. Look at point 1 again and point 4 here. Point 1 is efficient because it is on the UPF curve, while point 4 is not. But point 4 is more equitable according to the Rawlsian because the social welfare is higher. Second, we can also see that different views of equity may result in different redistribution policy. If the initial allocation point is at point 1, utilitarians will preferably suggest the redistribution of resources from point 1 to point 2. Rawlsian, on the other hand, will choose point 3 instead. As for the social indifference curve, or SIC, it measures both efficient and equitable allocations in terms of social welfare. See the difference with the previous UPF and social welfare curves. The SIC curves are expressed in terms of the two outputs. Along the SIC, all combinations of good have the same level of social welfare. In our discussion, the SIC will be used later when we discuss output efficiency. Okay, now let's talk about the second aspect of efficiency, input efficiency, or sometimes called technical efficiency, conditions under which firms combine inputs to produce a given output as inexpensively as possible. Input efficiency explanation is similar to efficiency in exchange. We begin with the Edgeworth box. It's now about two firms that produce clothing and food respectively. They choose the combinations of input to produce certain level of output. The box now shows the limit of input available for both firms. At point A, the input allocation is not efficient. The yellow shaded area is again the Pareto improvement that can be made through trade of inputs. Moving from A to B, C, or D results in Pareto improvement that leads to efficient allocations of input. At point B, C, or D, we can observe that no firm can produce more without causing other firm to produce less. Thus, all the points are efficient. Then we get again the contra curve. The tangency points on the contra curve show all the efficient use of inputs. One mathematical property from all the efficient point is now MRTS, marginal rate of technical substitution A equals to marginal rate of technical substitution B. MRTS is the slope of an isoquant. It's the ratio of MPL and MPK, or marginal productivity of labor and capital. Furthermore, to minimize the cost, both firms will also produce and choose their input level when their MRTS are equal to the price ratio of the two inputs, wage per rent. So here we have MRTS of both firms are equal, and they are also equal to wage per rent. Satisfying this condition means that a firm has achieved its technical efficiency. And lastly, the third aspect of efficiency. From the Edgeworth box diagram, just like the UPF, all the points in the contract curve are now expressed differently, not in terms of the two inputs, but in terms of the two outputs produced by the two firms. Here we have the production possibility frontier, or PPF. All points along the PPF are technically efficient. Now, we are looking for the output efficiency in a competitive market. The production or supply side is represented by the PPF, and the consumer or demand side is represented by our previous social indifference curve. The efficient combination of output is produced when the marginal rate of transformation between the two goods, which measures the cost of producing one good relative to the other, is equal to the consumer's marginal rate of substitution, which measures the marginal benefit of consuming one good relative to the other. MRP is the slope of PPF, which is marginal cost F per marginal cost C, while MRS is the slope of social indifference curve. In a competitive market, all consumers allocate their budget so that their marginal rates of substitution between two goods are equal to the price ratio. In other words, MRS equals PF per PC. At the same time, each profit maximizing firm will produce its output up to the point at which price is equal to marginal cost, or marginal cost F equals PF and marginal cost C equals PC. Therefore, the final condition equations for output efficiency in competitive market is this. MRP is tangent with MRS as well as price ratio at point A. If, for example, the price ratio is PF per PCW like this, and this is the world prices, what will happen? The economy will produce at point B, the tangency point between the price line and the PPF. However, the consumption will be at point C, the tangency point between the price line and the social indifference curve. So, excess supply of clothing will occur because the supply CB is bigger than the demand CC. On the other hand, there will be excess demand for food because the demand FC is bigger than the supply FB. If trade with other economies is possible, at the existing world prices, the economy could export the excess supply of clothing abroad, and in return, the excess demand for food can be satisfied through import. Without trade, excess supply and excess demand will adjust the domestic good price level. Prices will return to PF per PC, reaching the equilibrium at point A, our former case in the previous slide. Which condition now is better, with or without trade? From the diagram, trade is better for the society. Social indifference curve at SIC2 is clearly higher than SIC1. That is what we call as gain from trade. Trade is like an expanded production possibility frontier for the domestic economy. Okay, so that's all about economic efficiency. Please be aware with the aspects, the conditions that needs to be satisfied, and also the diagram used to explain each aspect. Don't forget also the slopes of every curve in each diagram. Lastly, comprehend also the related issues to economic efficiency problems. And after this, we'll be talking briefly about the last issue, which is market failures. What is market failure? It is a situation where free markets fail to allocate resources efficiently. Market failures are characterized with the existence of a deadweight loss or the equilibrium levels of quantity and price of a commodity that are over or below their efficient levels. The first source of market failure is market power. We know that the competitive market equilibrium is Pareto efficient. And we have learned that market power causes the equilibrium quantity and price shift from their competitive or efficient level. Look at the two diagrams here. In both cases, deadweight loss occur after shifting from the competitive equilibrium points. The first is the monopolistic case. Free market in this situation causes equilibrium to occur at too low quantity level and too high price level. The second is monopsonistic case. Free market in this situation causes equilibrium to occur at too low quantity level and also too low price level. The second source of market failure is incomplete information. Because of incomplete or asymmetric information, products of different qualities are sold at a single price. The customer of insurance, for instance, know their risk profiles better than the insurance company. The debtors know their credit risk better than the lending institution. And the used car sellers must know better about the quality of their cars than the buyers. Look at the two diagrams taken from the Pendic textbook here. The initial equilibrium conditions are at point A for high quality cars market and at point B for low quality cars market. The problem is when so many cars with different qualities available in the used car markets, high price is not necessarily an indicator for a high quality car. Buyers will lower their expectation about the average quality of cars on the market. The perceived demand for high quality cars as consequence are getting lower and lower, lowering their price level too. On the other hand, the perceived demand for low quality car is getting higher and highering their price level too. In the end, the low quality cars drive out high quality cars. We have the so-called adverse selection problem. Price for low quality car is getting normal, but in the market, there is no more high quality cars available. In short, market failure occurs because asymmetric information has prevented market for used car to provide high quality cars, so undersupply problem. Externalities are the third source of market failure. This kind of market failure occurs even when the competitive market works normally. In negative externality case, firms and market as a whole fail to capture the external costs arising from the firm's production. The most common example for these external costs is the pollution resulting from the production process. The external costs are borne by other parties who may not even be involved in the production process. Look at this diagram. Competitive equilibrium, PC and QC, occurs at the intersection of the demand curve and the marginal private cost curve, or MPC. Any additional external cost per unit increase of output level in the market is reflected by this marginal external cost curve. Firms should use the marginal social cost curve, the summation of MPC and MEC instead of the MPC curve alone in determining their output level in the market. Failing to take into account the MEC has resulted in oversupply in the market. Price level is also too low, failing to reflect the externality effect. In the positive externality case, what is happening is undersupply. The external benefits enjoyed by other parties is not reflected in market prices. Many people would enjoy the benefit of more flowers on the street, for instance, but they don't pay the flower sellers for it. Look at this diagram. Firms should use the MSB curve, or marginal social benefit, the summation of the marginal benefit or demand and the marginal external benefit instead of the demand curve alone. So the efficient level is at PE and QE. However, failing to take into account the marginal external benefit, the quantity is too low at QC and so is the price at PC. In public goods case, the form of market value is undersupply or even zero supply of the public goods. Public goods are characterized as non-excludable and non-rival. With non-excludability characteristic alone, private sector in the market has no incentive to provide the public goods. It's too difficult for them to charge the price to the customers due to the free rider problem. Non-rivalry characteristics, on the other hand, with or without non-excludability conditions, tends to give inefficient outcome. With practically zero marginal cost, even if firms can charge the price will be inefficient since it is most likely not zero or not equal to the marginal cost. If they cannot charge the price or the goods are non-excludable, then again, there will be no incentive for the firm to produce the goods. That's why public goods are mostly provided by the government unless there is such an arrangement as public-private partnerships in hand. Government has the power to enforce people to pay through tax system mechanism. Efficient provision of public goods is almost similar to the private good. It is at the intersections of the marginal cost curve and the total demand curve. But remember, with non-rival condition, supply to one person means it is available to all. So we don't horizontally sum the individual demands to get the total demand. Instead, we vertically sum the individual demands like this. For certain level of provision of the public goods, we add the value evaluation of each customer. Okay, that's all about general equilibrium, economic efficiency, and market values that I can explain at the moment. Thank you very much for the attention. See you again in different video and different topic of microeconomics. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good day everyone.